I still remember the exact second my world cracked open, the faint buzz of a phone at 2:17 a.m., the bluish glow spilling across our dark kitchen, and the way my heart stuttered when I saw a single heart eyes emoji flash on my husband's screen from someone saved as plumbing emergency. Tell me honestly, if you were standing there barefoot on cold tile, staring at that ridiculous contact name, would you have opened the phone or pretended you never saw it? Because in that frozen moment, every instinct in me screamed to look away, to protect the life I thought I had. But curiosity, or maybe dread, won. That message was the first domino in a chain that destroyed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and revenge. And even now, years later, I still ask myself whether I went too far with what came next. My name's Lauren, I'm 34, and this is the story of how I discovered my husband's secret affair, and the shocking thing I did after. I met David when I was 26 and swore I'd never date again. My last boyfriend had ghosted me after I paid his grad school application fees, and I'd promised myself I'd never let a man make me feel small again. Then David appeared like some movie cliché, a tall high school history teacher with a warm laugh that made you forget your own name. We met at a friend's barbecue. I was flipping veggie burgers because I'd been vegetarian for years, and he teased me about disappointing cavemen. I laughed so hard I snorted, and something inside me relaxed for the first time in months. 3 months later, he proposed on a mountaintop at sunrise with a ring he'd saved by tutoring kids after school. I said yes before he even finished the question. For 5 years, we were the couple people envied. We bought a little fixer-upper and turned it into a home with paints, bladdered weekends, and arguments about backsplash tiles. I started a small graphic design business from our spare bedroom. He coached varsity soccer on weekends. We had our ritual Thursday date nights phones locked in a drawer while we invented stories about the strangers around us. I'd post pictures with captions like "still obsessed with my best friend," and I meant every word. Friends called us the grossly in love couple. I thought we were unbreakable. Then life started slipping sideways. It began with tiny cracks I didn't want to see. David started coming home later. Grading sessions, he said. He'd smell faintly of vanilla body spray, and when I asked about it, he'd laugh and blame the staff lounge microwave. I told myself I was overthinking. My business was taking off, deadlines were tight, and I didn't want to play detective in my own marriage. He'd always been steady, I was the anxious one, so I pushed the doubts down and kept moving. The real spiral began when his mother was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Everything else stopped. I drove her to chemo, sat with her through every appointment, and tried to keep David together. He changed. He drank more. 2 beers became 4. 4 became whiskey on the back porch while he stared at nothing. When I'd ask what was wrong, he'd snap that he just needed 5 minutes. I told myself grief could twist anyone. I became the perfect supportive wife meal, prepping, managing meds, keeping the house spotless so he wouldn't have to think. I dropped 15 pounds from stress. My hair came out in clumps in the shower, but I smiled anyway because that's what strong wives do. 18 months later, his mom passed. The funeral was brutal. David's eulogy had half the church sobbing, and that night he held me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You're my family now," he whispered. "I can't lose you too." I believed him. For a while, things seemed better. He quit drinking as much, started running again, even surprised me with a weekend trip to the mountains for our 7th anniversary. I posted a photo of us in front of a waterfall captioned "Stronger Together." 400 likes. I wish I'd known that was the calm before the storm. 6 weeks later came the plumbing emergency text. I'd stayed up late finishing a project for a yoga studio client. Soft pastels, clean fonts. David had fallen asleep on the couch, phone face down on the coffee table. When it buzzed, I thought it was mine. I picked it up, the preview line glowed. "Can't wait to feel you again," smiling face with heart eyes. My stomach flipped so violently I nearly dropped it. Plumbing emergency. We hadn't had a single leak in years. I carried the phone into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the tub edge with shaking hands. His passcode was our wedding date, of course it was. Messages flooded the screen, hundreds of them, photos. Videos, a woman named Jessica, 20, 8, blonde, a third grade teacher. Their first message was 3 days after his mother's funeral. 3 days, he'd told her she made him feel alive again. I scrolled until my thumb cramped, each message slicing deeper. He'd been sleeping with her for over a year, while I was feeding his dying mother while I cried in hospital parking lots. When dawn crept through the blinds, I was still sitting there. David knocked on the door. "Babe, you okay?" His voice was groggy, innocent. I opened the door, handed him his phone, and said, "Tell me who plumbing emergency is." Color drained from his face. He whispered, "It's not what you think." I asked, "How long?" He stared at the floor. 13 months. Something inside me just switched off. I told him to get out. I vaguely remember throwing his Xbox into the yard. My sister came over with wine and stayed for 3 days while I alternated between screaming and staring at walls. David bombarded me with apologies, Bible quotes, therapy promises. I ignored him. On day 4, I changed the locks. On day 5, I printed every single message, 200 pages, and left the stack on the kitchen table with a note, "For your lawyer." But the rage didn't stop when he left. It festered, coiling into something sharp. That's when I learned Jessica was engaged to a firefighter named Mike who looked like he could press a car. Their wedding was in 2 months. I could have walked away. I could have started over quietly. Instead, every time I thought about David saying he was grieving, the anger flared hot enough to burn. So I made a choice. I created a fake Instagram account, generic pretty, girl name, no selfies, and messaged Mike, "Hey, I think you should know something about your fiancé." I attached screenshots just enough. Motel receipts, "I love you more than him" texts. A video of her laughing about sneaking around while Mike worked night shifts. I hit send and turned my phone off for 12 hours. When I turned it back on, I had 47 missed calls from David and 1 message from Mike. "Thank you, wedding's off. You just saved me years of lies." My hand shook reading it. Minutes later, David showed up pounding on my door, shouting that I'd ruined his life. I called the police. They escorted him away while the neighbors watched. Jessica lost her job. The district had a morality clause, and parents weren't thrilled about their kid's teacher being a married man's mistress. David got suspended. Our house went up for sale. I moved into a tiny apartment with my cat and a mattress on the floor. So here's where I pause and turn it to you, because this is the crossroads that still haunts me. I exposed them. I burned their lives down, but I also blew up 2 relationships and maybe 2 careers. David's mother was gone. He had no one left. Jessica's fiancé was innocent, but was it really my place to detonate her life too? I could have just walked away. Instead, I lit the match and watched it all burn. So before I tell you what happened next, tell me honestly, would you have sent those messages or stayed silent? What would you have done in my shoes? 3 months later, divorce finalized, assets split, and I was finally sleeping again. One Sunday morning, I opened my door to find David standing there with a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, and dark circles like bruises under his eyes. 5 minutes, he said. Against better judgment, I let him in. He sat on my thrift store couch and cried. Real messy sobbing. He said he'd been in therapy, that he'd ended things with Jessica the moment I found out, that he'd been suicidal and ashamed. Then he slid a folder across the table. Inside were his therapy notes, a resignation letter from his school, and a check for $12,000, everything he had left after legal fees. "I don't want forgiveness," he said. "I just want you to know I'm trying to become someone you could have been proud of." I stared at that check. Part of me wanted to tear it up. Another part remembered our first hike, our laughter, the quiet nights when love felt simple. I took the check, ripped it in half, and handed it back. "I don't want your money." I told him, "I want you to live with what you did, every day, like I have to." He nodded, wiped his face, and walked out. That was the last time I saw him. After that, life slowly stitched itself back together. I kept the apartment, poured everything into my business, and within a year, it hit 6 figures. I started dating again cautiously. Mike, the firefighter, actually reached out months later to thank me in person. We had coffee once. He was kind, but the spark wasn't there. Jessica moved 3 states away. Someone told me she was waiting tables. David resurfaced at a small private school coaching soccer for half the pay. Some friends sided with him, others with me, most drifted off. I still flinched when I saw sunflowers at the grocery store. I still checked new partners' phones when they showered. Therapy helped, but rebuilding trust is slow, like learning to breathe again after drowning. People love to call betrayal heartbreak, but that word is too soft. Betrayal rewires you. It teaches you that safety was an illusion, that love can vanish mid-sentence. Revenge in the moment feels righteous, like reclaiming power, but its aftertaste lingers. When the dust settled, I realized I hadn't just punished David and Jessica. I'd scorched parts of myself too. There's a version of me from before all this, bright, hopeful, quick to laugh, and sometimes I still miss her. But maybe losing her was the price of finally seeing people for who they really are. Now, when friends come to me with their own suspicions, late-night texts, weird excuses, I never tell them to stay silent. Truth hurts, but lies rot you from the inside out. I tell them, find out, face it, but don't let revenge define you. Walk away with clean hands if you can. I wish I had. Still, part of me can't regret warning Mike. He deserved the truth. Maybe that makes me both hero and villain. Maybe just human. So that's the whole messy truth. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. I want to know, did I go too far, or did justice finally catch up to them? Like this video if you think I was right to expose the affair, or if you've ever been through something similar. Subscribe for more stories next week. I'm sharing how my best friend tried to steal my identity, and trust me, that one's wild. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. I'll see you all in the next story.